You're listening to the Good Christian Podcast. We're not saying that we're always good Christians, but this is always a good podcast for Christians to listen to. I'm your host, Alex Sanfilippo. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. Welcome back, everybody. I am extremely excited about this episode because I have my favorite guest. Yes, I have a favorite guest back on the show this month. Her name is Alicia Sanfilippo, and she happens to be my wife. Hello, Alicia. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I want to bring you back because I'm excited to do another relationship episode with you. This will be our third that we've done on this podcast, and they've always gone really well. People respond very well to them. So we were kind of both talking about, what are we actually going to share? Because we've kind of covered marriage, and the first one was like some just relationship questions from our actual, viewers and listeners and things like that on Daily PS and the Good Christian Podcast. So we were kind of going through how do we do something a little bit different. So we decided and we landed on answering the 10 most asked relationship questions from around the web. So we actually went to popular websites and found what seems to be the most popular questions being asked. Some of them had answers. You remember we were looking at it? And they were like really lousy answers, a lot
Terrible.
of them. We're going to give, we're actually going to say where we got these from. So some of them are okay, of course. Some of them are all right. But let's go right ahead and jump into these questions. So the very first question here is, has social media and dating apps ruined dating? That was from reddit.com. What do you think?
I don't think it's completely ruined it, but it's definitely made it more difficult. I think it's just so easy to have someone so readily available on your phone. All you have to do is swipe left or right, whichever way, and there's someone new on your phone. So I think that's difficult for us to keep up with, or someone to measure up to all of your standards, because you're looking at all these probably fake people on the internet and on these apps. I think it makes it much more difficult.
Yeah, I agree, because social media in general is more of, it's going to show you people's highlights, right? And I think we've all said that before. You're not seeing who people truly are. So on social media, you're seeing just the best parts of that person. So they might look amazing there. Truth is, they're probably a wreck, just like you, just like me, right? But it doesn't always look that way. And then also, I think that same thing, social media really shows you what you're not what you are. So it always is going to make you feel less than, or make you feel like you should have something different. So I think it's definitely kind of created a false sense of what dating should be and what it actually is. It's more, we live in a hookup culture, as I call it. I hope that's okay to say on this podcast, but that truthfully is what we live in now, and that's what people are more using these apps for. But I don't think it's completely true, because I think that Match.com, I think, is the one that's supposed to be really good, I believe, and eHarmony are the two, I think, that are supposed to be really still like set up for dating, and you have to get to know somebody before you just kind of meet up or something like that, right?
Yeah, and I've heard of a couple good Christian ones, so there are good ones out there.
Yeah. So that was one of the top questions here. So going to move on to number 2 here.
Okay, this question is from glamour.com. Why is my boyfriend or husband always playing video games?
Wow, that is a good one. I like that. Video games are fine. I'm going to start off with saying that. Personally, I don't play games really anymore. I had an Xbox before we got married, and without Alicia saying anything, I decided on my own to get rid of it because it was time for me to grow up. I realized it was just time wasting, and it wasn't going to help our relationship at all. It wasn't helping me at all. It was time to get rid of it. But if it's something you're both into, because we have some couple friends that they're gamers. That's what they're into too. That's their way
their
of
date night.
Yeah, that's their way of having fun together, and that's cool. Not you and me, but that's cool to be able to see them doing that. So there's nothing wrong with it in general. But if a lot of women are asking this question, it's probably because men are spending way, way too much time on video games. It doesn't really necessarily mean that, again, that games are wrong. There's anything wrong with that. But if it means you're putting aside your relationship because you need to play the game, or you need to be just spending time on video games to decompress and things like that, and you're not actually finding joy or happiness in the other person that you're in a relationship with, that is a problem. And the fact that this was such a popular question kind of means that people are really imbalanced. So guys, if you're gamers, maybe just tone it back a bit. When your wife or girlfriend's around, be willing to spend time with them and turn off the games for a little bit. So I think that's probably the best advice you can give on that question. Number 3, how do you build trust in a relationship? This one actually came straight from Google Trends. This is actually, I think out of all these, this is the one that was asked more than any, which I thought was kind of sad, right?
For sure.
What do you think about that question?
I think open communication is the biggest one, just to always Be communicating about where you are, like what you're doing, anything like that, how you're feeling. And just being honest. And like if you're actually dating, like talk about how you're dating and not just like hanging out. I think that helps a lot too. That way no one's just wondering what's going on. And then also, like if you have been like cheated on in the past, like leave that in the past. Don't go into a new relationship thinking that they're cheating on you just because someone else did. Like, so anything bad that's happened to you in a previous relationship, like leave it back there with that last relationship and don't bring it into the next one expecting the same thing out of this new person.
I think that's a really good point that I never really thought of, but you do see that a lot. People kind of assume that their next person's going to do the same thing. So you treat them a certain way because you're expecting them to do a certain action afterwards. And that's dangerous. And that really, that shows a distrust from day one, right? Like that's really the wrong way to be actually in a relationship, period.
Yeah, it's a good way to ruin a good relationship.
Yeah, it really is. So I kind of want to add a little bit more to that. For me, trust comes with you really you have to know yourself and you have to have some form of confidence. People that seem the most untrusting are the ones that seem to have like a lack of self-confidence, self-worth themselves. It's almost like you don't trust the person that you are on the inside. And I think that's a super dangerous place for people to be. And when you kind of have that issue going on, it's hard for you to trust other people because you get either intimidated by them or you feel threatened by them. And that's really dangerous. And for me, that all comes back to my foundational relationship with God. That's where that's where I've learned how to truly trust and to trust in who God's made me to be and the relationship I have with him. So I think that's a huge point, is really work on your relationship with God and make sure that you really do trust yourself. Like be willing to understand that I can accomplish what I set out to do. I think that's a huge thing. And you know me, I'm big on like self encouragement and motivation, things like that. So that's really important for me in the area of trust as well.
Yeah, it's a really good point. So the next question is from GQ.com. How do I get over a relationship or breakup?
This is probably one of my favorite ones, actually. And I'm going to say this in the nicest way possible. So I'm going to word it, just take time to heal, I think is probably the best way to say it. I see so many people that break up with somebody and they rush right into another relationship. The next day, they're already going on a date. And the truth is, those people are just uncomfortable being alone. And that to me really means that you're never going to get over any relationship because you're not even willing to confront yourself and figure out who you actually are as a person. And I think that's probably the most dangerous place to be. If you go from relationship to relationship, eventually, guess what? One is probably going to work out. But at the end of the day, you're always going to have that inward issue where you don't even really know who you are. I didn't really say how to get over a relationship or breakup, so I'll let you kind of add a little bit to that. I just said like the root of the problem is like we just rushed in from one thing to another without taking that time to heal is really a dangerous place. But what are your thoughts on that question?
Well, I was just thinking that the best way to really heal it when you're taking that time is to really like dig into the Word of God, like join a group at church, like get involved into a community that is supportive and that can help you and just be there for you no matter what's going on, and like get to know yourself better, but most importantly get to know God, because no matter what you're going through, like God is going to be, your rock. He's going to get you through whatever. And so if you don't have him, nothing is ever going to be quite as good as it could be.
Yeah, I actually we're going to be really transparent here, Alicia. You ready?
Sure.
So a couple months into our relationship, when we were dating, we decided to take a break for a little bit there. And although, most people might be like, all right, I'm going to go date some other people. That's my chance. Or I'm going to go do this and that. Both of us just really, really connected with God on a deeper level. And it was one of the healthiest things we ever did in our relationship at the beginning. And I really think so. When we came back, we were much stronger, but it's because we didn't go do what the world says to do, which is go find somebody else real quick, or don't spend too much time alone. No, we actually both did that intentionally, spent that time alone, grew a lot in God, really saw a lot, and then came back together, a couple weeks later. I'm not exactly sure how long it was, something like that. It felt like a longer time, but
I think it was 2 weeks. I remember.
Okay.
It was a rough 2 weeks, but it was definitely worth it for me. I got a lot out of it. I just literally spent all my time at church or reading the Bible alone. It was awesome. For sure.
So next question here, number 5. What does a healthy relationship look like? And this is from muscleandfitness.com.
I think every relationship definitely looks different. Everyone's different, so the way that you are with them is just going to be different from any other relationship. There's no real formula. But I do think healthy relationships are definitely based on trust, which we've already talked about that a little bit. And you're definitely going to bring out the best in each other, not the worst. You're going to lift each other up. You're going to bring each other closer to God. You're going to help each other succeed in whatever you're working on and not bring each other down.
Yeah.
Of course, you might have disagreements and arguments here and there, but for the majority of the time, you're going to be better for each other and you're going to make each other better.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned something, and you're going to have those conflicts throughout your relationship, right? Conflict resolution is a huge point of what a healthy relationship looks like. We all know those couples, and you've seen them. Some of them fight in public. You'll be out with them, they'll get like an argument.
So awkward.
It is so awkward. It's the weirdest thing. And it's like, man, is that how you deal with any sort of trouble in the relationship, right? I think a really healthy relationship is one that when there is a problem, and there should be problems, and there will be problems, if not, there's something wrong. But when you do have those issues, it's the ones that are able to really resolve it in a loving and peaceful way. And I think that's one thing that's always been something that stood out in our relationship among our friends when people see that in us. Because, we have disagreements. You and I are very different people.
Very.
Yes, very. We don't look the same. We're not the same at all. And but we're able to really to argue well when we need to, and we're able to come to a resolution. Because at the end of the day, we always have the same focus, which is it's got to be good for both of us. And we're always focused on the other person, and we're focused on finding the solution to the problem, not winning.
Right.
And I think that's a huge deal. So just think about like a healthy relationship. I think to me, conflict resolution is one of the biggest points. But we already did talk about trust, and that is huge as well. And just like you said, bringing out the best in the other person is such a huge deal. Your relationship is not supposed to highlight you, right? It's supposed to be able to highlight the other person in the couple, and that's a huge thing to really be focused on and to remember.
All right, number 6 from askmen.com. What does it mean when a man says he has no expectations?
Love this question. He's lying. If he says he has no expectations, he's not telling you the truth, or he just doesn't care at all. And here's the deal. The worst marriage advice you could ever get is to go into your relationship with no expectations, because that makes no sense at all. I'm going to go ahead and use the example of a car. So if you go to buy a new car and you have no expectations for this car, right? You're like, I'm not going to have any expectations. I'm just going to get a nice car. And then it doesn't turn on. You're going to be furious, right? If you just paid for that car, right? Wouldn't you, Alicia?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you'd be very mad. But if you said you had no expectations, then you shouldn't have expected it to drive, right?
Yeah.
All right, so here's the deal. In a relationship, when someone says they don't have any expectations, they really are, again, either lying or they don't care, because you need to have some healthy expectations. So again, sorry if you're a marriage counselor out there, and we have a few of them that actually listen to this. If you're telling people that's terrible advice, you need to find out the way to say it. So,
oh my goodness.
But the truth is, you have to set healthy expectations. So when someone says they don't have any, it might be nice and cute to say, but to me, that would be a cause for worry. I would be concerned about that, because I hope that you expect me to be a good man, to provide, to do my part in this relationship. Those are all things that you need to expect of me. It's part of caring about the relationship. Yeah. I know I was a little harsh, hateful there even, but I'm going to let you kind of take over on that question. You have anything else to add on that?
I mean, I think you pretty much covered it.
Okay, cool. Great. So what's next? Number 7, right?
Yep.
Why are so many women so quick to call a guy boring? From psychologytoday.com.
This is a good one. I think one of the biggest parts of this is that guys aren't always like stepping up to be the man, to take the lead, to really pursue the woman, to ask her out on a real date, to make sure that the woman knows that they actually are dating. And I don't just blame that on the guys, but I also blame it on women sometimes, because they can be a little overbearing. They can be pursuing the guy too hard and not actually giving them the chance to be the man and the leader in the relationship. But I definitely think that's one of the bigger parts of that question. Yeah,
no, I agree that is important. I have a couple thoughts in here, so I'm going to share my first one, which is, guys, make sure that you aren't boring. If you're trying to get out and start dating, don't be a full-time video game player or someone who just sits around and watches sports all day. We already talked about the video game thing, right?
Yep.
So, but if guys, check yourself. Like, are you actually boring? Like, do you actually like to go do anything fun? I think of me before we were dating. I played video games a lot, like going back to that. And I wasn't really into sports. I just like to play video games. I was a boring guy, so you really got to check and make sure, go find some hobbies, be willing to get out, be willing to take a girl on a nice date, find some fun things to do. So I think that's a really important one. Another one, though, is kind of like expectations and kind of the thing that media has set for us. And I know you have some thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I think the worst thing media has done for us is the reality dating shows, whether it's The Bachelor or The Bachelorette or whatever the other shows are called. I just remember watching one of them. I got like 3 episodes in, and then I realized I needed to stop watching it because I had all these expectations of how Alex should be whisking me away on these tropical vacations, like
nice.
on a random Tuesday.
Sounds
it would
great.
be nice. But I realized, I was putting all these expectations on Alex that just aren't real. Like, no one does that in real life. It's all just on TV, and most of those relationships don't even work out after the lights and the camera stop rolling. So we just have to have like real expectations on what real men are like in real relationships, and not ones on TV.
Yeah, I mean, movies have done the same thing. I mean, you go back and watch any like romantic comedy, especially like in the early 2000s, it was like every date was like the nicest restaurant you can imagine.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't seem to have jobs or anything else to care about. So I think the big point here is for men and for women, make sure that you're living in reality, not in some fantasy land. Make sure you're being realistic about what is actually going to be fun and not boring, and that it actually fits, again, reality. So that's a really important point there.
Yeah. So number 8 is from Quora.com, and it is my boyfriend overreacting to my friendship with another guy?
Possibly. So this kind of goes back to trust, and I know that we've kind of mentioned that a couple times here. You really have to be careful with this one. Some people really feel very strongly about this, including our current vice president. Like, he won't ever be alone with a woman at all,
right,
for any reason other than his wife, and I think that's honorable. And a lot of people say that really isn't always possible because there's business relationships that are male and female, and you kind of have to be able to keep business moving, right? But as far as like friendship is concerned, I think it just has to be healthy. Like, there has to be like a reason for it. It can't just be, I can't be going out looking for girls to be friends with, right?
Right.
Now, if I grew up with somebody that was like my neighbor my whole life, which I don't have any real experience like that, but let's just say I did, it would make sense. But we'd have to have some very healthy boundaries to make sure that it's known that we are only friends and that's it. You probably have more insight on this than I do, though. What do you think?
Well, I just think that you and the person that you're dating or married to, like, you have to have boundaries set for each other, and it's something that you both have to agree on. It can't just be one way or the other. Like, no one can be more controlling or anything like that. You both have to completely agree on it. And, people can take it, like, too far, according to some people, but it just doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. It's what you and your wife or husband or boyfriend or girlfriend think. Like, it's just your relationship, and no one else's opinion matters.
Yeah, and open communication, again, is really important with that because, like, example, I have some colleagues I work with that are female, but I'll always tell you when I'm actually going to, like, hey, I have a lunch thing with so-and-so, and then I'll call you afterwards or text you afterwards. Just, again, it's open communication. It's such an important thing, and if ever something comes up, and this, we've talked about this, if ever you're not comfortable with a certain individual, you just don't feel like they have good intentions, whatever it may be, not saying that they, they're actually that way, I'm quick to say, okay, that's not happening. I'll bring a third party. And that's just really important, that you can't get frustrated with that person and be like, oh my gosh, this person's my friend though. You have to be
sensitive to the other person.
Exactly. That's so important to just have in the relationship. Moving right along. You ready?
Yeah.
You doing good?
Yeah.
We got 2 questions left. Number 9, how many dates does it take to know if there's real potential? This one's from eharmony.com. So I have an answer for this one. I want to share it real quick.
Let's hear it.
I believe it takes the same number of licks as it takes to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop.
Oh.
Right? That took a minute. You're like, what does that mean? No, but there's just no right answer, right? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there is no right answer. I think it just depends on you and the other person, how long you've known each other. Like, if you've just met and you're going on a first date, it might take a couple dates. It might take 10 dates. Who knows? But it just all depends on each person and how long you've known them. Yeah,
I think also it's important to get that person around your friends as well. I think that's like one of the, I think you really have to do that to know if they're weird or if they're crazy, right?
Yeah,
like, how do they actually act on that? Like, that's a big deal of knowing if there's actually real potential. But I've already been transparent a couple times on here, right? So I'm going to do it again. So Alicia and I, we went on our first date, and I knew that there was potential. Now, I have to give a little backstory on that. We'd been friends for almost 3 years before that point. We were close as well. We were good friends for quite some time before we even considered dating. So the reason I took her on a date is because I knew there was potential and I already got the opportunity to really get to know her closely. So, I don't know what that means for you necessarily, but sometimes it's good to get to know someone on a personal and friendship level before you really even do the whole dating thing. So I think that's a great way. It worked good for me. We're happily married.
Yeah,
so
here we are.
It's been good. But what else would you say on this? Like, what other like indicators are there to know if there's potential?
I think another good thing would be to hang out with that person with their family, because if you can see how they treat your family, that's how they really, truly treat people. And I think that's always good to find out ahead of time.
That's a good tip right there. That's important. Yeah, what is their life with their family like? That's really, really good. So let's go ahead and jump into the last question here. You ready? Number 10. Go ahead.
Okay, this one is from Forbes.com. How can I tell if he or she is the one?
Wow, Forbes with the big question, right? Forbes would be the one to do it, of course. So this one's got another answer that's like a tough one, right? Like I already gave an answer earlier that was kind of like harsh about the expectation thing, but here we go again. I don't believe that there really is just the one. I think we have to be more realistic than that, because if there's only one person for you, something that was like designed for you, that would mean that no one ever made a mistake along the way. So that means every relationship you've ever seen had to be perfect in order for you to end up with the right one. And that basically what that's saying? I mean, it's really like fantasy. You know what? Actually, okay, if someone doesn't like that, there's like romantic people listening here that don't like that. I didn't make this up. I actually heard this and loved it so much that I took it as my own here, but it's from my pastor, Clay Baird. So I'm calling him out. I have a link to him on the show notes so you can kind of talk to him about it if you have any problems there.
Oh my goodness.
but really, I think we have to be more realistic than that. I do think there's some character traits that might lead to someone being a potential one that would work for you. But what do you think? Give us a woman's perspective on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first time I heard that, it definitely like made me a little bit sad, because you just have like these romantic ideas from fairy tales. And,
again, Clay Baird, not me.
Yeah, it was Clay, but so it does make you a little sad hearing it for the first time. But if we're going to be realistic, like there's going to be no perfect person for you, because there's no perfect person. There's not going to be any perfect relationship, because again, there's no perfect people. So you just have to find someone that, has the same faith as you. You have the same vision for your life, things like that. You just want to be similar minded, so that you know that you're going to get along well.
Yeah, I think that kind of along with that is no matter what, you're going to be different than the other person, right? Opposites attract is a big deal. You and I are complete opposites. On any sort of personality test you take, we're not the same at all, right?
Completely different.
Yep, completely different. Why do you say it like that? No, I'm just kidding. No, we are completely different, but that wasn't, you don't look for the same person as you. Someone who's like, oh my gosh, we like and we do all the same things. That's not really what it means to like be compatible or to be someone that you could end up with, right? It actually
probably kill each other.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Could you imagine if we're exactly the same? You'd fight about like what right? and how to live your life. But no, the truth is like finding somebody that could be like potentially the one for you, as we're going to call it. It's all going to take really knowing yourself. I've said that a few times. Trusting yourself, knowing yourself, and then just seeing that person complement the life journey that you're on as well. I always like to think of it as two people running in a race. You don't slow down to meet somebody. You don't speed up to meet somebody. If you're going to talk to somebody during a race, even just for a second, it's the person that's running at the same pace beside you, right? I think that's the person that you're supposed to end up with, is somebody who's doing that. It shouldn't be someone that makes you do a complete 180 because you want to talk to them.
Yeah, I totally agree. You should definitely be, kind of running at the same pace in the same direction. And I do want to say that even though no one is perfect and there may not be a specific perfect person out there for you, there definitely is a good person out there for you, and you can find someone who does line up with things that you're looking for, as long as you don't have crazy expectations, but you can definitely find someone that will suit you well and just support you and help you out in life.
Absolutely. There's a special somebody for everybody, right?
Yep.
That's a good way to say it. Well, cool. Alicia, this has been super fun. I'm glad to have you back on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, this was our third episode together. I can't wait for the fourth. It'll be a little bit. We'll space out these relationship ones, right? So, but thank you again for being on the podcast episode. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you again for listening to the Good Christian Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please go to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and a review. This really helps us to continue to impact and reach more people. I'm looking forward to sharing another episode with you next month, but until then, always remember that the strongest relationships are built on the foundation of trust.